personality, the vehicle, and the monopole, otherwise explained as the vehicle, the passenger, and the driver. And I will first and foremost say that I don't fully agree with Ra. I will present both points of view, both his point of view and my point of view, just so I can keep being completely honest, both myself and to the source material. And in order to explain what happens, what's the difference between them, I will have to start by walking you through where they are, first and foremost, and what happens, how they work together, how they interact. Now, the design crystal, which is, this is my design crystal. The design crystal comes from a bundle within the earth, within the earth's core. And the design crystal comes from there and returns there when after our death, after the Bardo procedure. While the personality crystal comes from the crystals of consciousness that surround planet Earth. And this is the part that gives us our Godhead. This is the part that gives us past life memories. This is the part that we call the soul that travels, that reincarnates. This is it. This is the personality. Now, what is important to understand is that at the moment of conception, when we are conceived by our parents, the personality crystal is not present. It's only the design crystal and the magnetic monopole. And the first center that gets created inside the mother's womb, it's the throat center. And the reason that's the first center created is because this is the manifesting center, and all the rest of our body gets manifested through this energy center. This is a very fixed energy center. And it's pretty much the roam of our body. All the channels lead to the throat in order to be manifested, in order to be expressed. So this is the first center that forms. And in the beginning, in the first couple of weeks, in the first 8 weeks to be precise, both the personality, both the design and the magnetic monopole are together in the throat center. They're both together. It's really weird to imagine, but the design crystal should have an embedded thing in it where the monopole, the magnetic monopole, would fit precisely in it. What is the magnetic monopole? It's literally a magnetic field that only attracts. That's why it's a monopole. And its role is to attract to us our path of least resistance. It's how we function in this world, how we are guided in this world. And that will later on become the driver. But at this point, when we are in our mother's womb for the first couple of weeks, it is in the throat together with the design crystal, creating our body. And the order in which the centers are created, it's quite interesting because it's created in the, just a second. Okay. It's it's created in a non-linear form. So the first thing that gets created is the ajna. And both crystals together, both elements together, the magnetic monopole and the design crystal, move together from the throat in the ajna. and continue creating through the throat, through our brain. And only in the third stage, so this is the first stage when they're both in the throat and manifesting the body. The second stage is when they both move into the ajna and continue creating us from there through the throat, still channels of the throat. And then it comes the third stage, where is the disassembling of the monopole. The monopole breaks from the crystal, from the design crystal, and moves into the G center, where it stays for the rest of our lives. Now, the interesting part of this is that Ra presents the situation as the most beautiful love story. It's a love story of sacrifice. He says that the monopole and the design crystal are in love with each other, and they are a perfect match to one another. The perfect piece missing, the perfect missing piece, but they have to sacrifice their perfect union in order for us to come into existence, in order for reality to form. And when they disassemble, two things happen. One, the whole procedure of the child growing inside the womb speeds up because the magnetic monopole being in the center of the being. And also the design crystal gets fixed in the ajna, gets its forever seat, forever until we die, but his lifetime seat in the ajna. And this is manifesting itself. The design crystal takes lead, and it's manifesting itself through self-consciousness or self-awareness. It's manifesting the body, and it does so through a process called memory. This is also talked about in the Hermetic studies, that the memory of how we should look, how we look like a human, how a dog looks like a dog, even while in their parents' womb, it's because of a process called memory that's instilled in the design crystal. And so the design crystal is capable to continue to align ourselves in order to form our body. In the next stage, what happens is the building of the heart. So we have the throat, the G center built, the ajna built, and the next part that becomes built is the heart or the ego. Now, the building of the heart is very important because it takes a vital space in the being's survival. This is also the immune system forming. It's the specific T cells that are meant to fight problems developed during pregnancy, and they are gate 26. Therefore, you can guess that in the next stage, the next center that gets built is the spleen, the center of the immune system, through its connection to the heart that was built in the previous stage, 2644, and the spleen is formed. And then we have the building of the root. So as you can see, the energy actually kind of spirals downwards. And then it starts spiraling back up. But what's important about the root is this is where the adrenal system is developed within the child. And what's also important, if there's any chance of a miscarriage, this is where it happens. If the root center doesn't get to be fully formed, there's still a chance of a miscarriage. Once the root center is formed, then the pregnancy is viable and stable. It's grounded. But also, we know that the root is a pressure center, and it's the pressure to finish the process. It's automatically speeding up the process. Now, the next center that gets formed in the next stage is the solar plexus. It gets connected to the root, to the 1949, and this is what forms the nervous system. All the neurological aspects that we know of that we have are formed through this process of building the solar plexus. And this stage is the longest stage. It takes over a month to complete because there's a lot of conditioning happening at this stage through the mother, through the emotional system of the mother. This is the forming of the emotional system of the child, and it will be directly connected and directly conditioned, even in pregnancy, by the emotional conditions of the mom. Then we have through channel 59.6, the building of the root center, sacral center, sorry. And this is what gives the future child the reproducing possibility. The sacral center makes the whole illusion possible. All our vehicles, all our bodies are designed to respond to the sexual stimulus. All of us are designed to respond. Even non-sacral beings are responsive to sexual stimulus, and even more so sexual beings. And now, gate 6 over here is the source of all emotional waves. This channel right here is the actually contains all of the emotional waves, because there is a genetic imperative to connect emotionally to the people we are meant to procreate with. There's a genetic imperative to form bonds for this reason. I think the genetic imperative is driven primarily by the fact that our children are born not fully developed. So there's a genetic imperative to make sure that there's an emotional connection for the child to be born in. So now, after this, we reach the final stage where through channel 515, it kind of completes the spiral and reaches back into the G center where it started when the two split from the ajna, and the whole process gets back. Now, as you can see, I didn't say anything about the head center. And that's because the head center is the seat of the personality crystal. And only after the whole mechanism is formed, only after the whole spiral is complete. And you can see that creation is made in the soul. And we know from the chakras that the Kundalini is also in the spiral. This is the spiral of Kundalini. This is how we're formed, and this is how our energy moves in a spiral, downwards and upwards. Now, there's a biological signal when the whole body is formed, when the fetus is ready for delivery. There's a biological system given by the design crystal itself. It happens in the ajna, it happens in the pineal gland. And when the design crystal decides that he finished with the building of the vessel, he finished the building of the body, it releases a specific hormone that calls in the passenger. So this is not a human until the passenger actually comes in and takes its seat in this head center. There's just a body at this point. It's not a human. It doesn't have personality. It doesn't have thoughts. it's not a human until the personality crystal is called in. But it is called in by a specific hormone that's being released by the design crystal when it completed the job. And the thing that happens when the personality crystal is being called in, it's being pretty much snatched from the crystal of the planet, crystal cover of the planet, and it's being snatched into the body. The first process that happens is serotonin is initiated. The process of serotonin and dopamine are both initiated, and the serotonin is very important because it marks the potential of this being coming to life. And obviously, the head center is the second pressure center of the body, and it places the woman, the mother, in imminent pressure that it's approaching the moment of delivery. This is what happens, and this is what drives the process of birth. Now, this is a very general view of what happens, how we are formed, because I don't want to get too detailed about it, because I want to talk about their role actually. But I wanted you to get a full picture of how they are formed, when they come to be, and why it's important, their positions. So the personality crystal is seated and forever will be seated in the head center. The design crystal is seated and forever will sit in the ajna center. And the magnetic monopole is in the G center, in the center of the body, pretty much where the sternum bone is on the body. Now, how do they function together? The magnetic monopole, it's as it's called, the magnetic monopole, and it literally pulls the two crystals together into this energy vehicle that is us. Without the magnetic monopole, the two crystals would express themselves separately, like this or this. But the magnetic monopole pulls them together and is able to form this structure that is us. He holds us in the illusion of this 3D. Now, this is how we are formed, and their role are the following. The design crystal is responsible for everything that's happening in our body. What's very important to understand is that what's motivating for the personality crystal is not motivating for the design. The design crystal is here to harmonize. It's looking for the path of least resistance. It's looking to follow the laws of nature. It's looking to commune with nature. While the perspective and the personality crystal's motivation, they find out about the world outside. It's looking towards the world outside to learn and experience life. Their motivations are very different, and this is something that pulls us in different directions at all times. Now, when we give authority to our authority inside the body, when we give the authority to the centers that are our authority, whether it is the solar plexus, the sacral, the spleen, the ego, the G center, or no authority. When we give authority to the body, what happens is we do not surrender to the design crystal. We surrender to this. to this energetic system that makes us us. So we will still, even when we completely surrender to our authority, we will still feel the different pulls from the personality's motivation that's very outward and from the design's personality version that's very drawn inwards and very towards avoiding all sorts of resistance. The design wants to fit in, the personality wants to stand out. Now, the part that how Ra explains it and where I disagree with him, I'm going to explain his version first. He explains that the vessel, our body, has a very intimate relationship with the design crystal, specifically because the design crystal has pretty much created the whole body. And because of this, the design crystal is what controls your hunger cues, your breathing, your walking, pretty much everything you do without thinking precisely, it is controlled by the design crystal. So the design crystal has a much more intimate connection with your body. And that's why it just does things. It just happens. You don't have to know about them. And that's the vehicle. This is the vehicle, the body, that has an intimate relationship with the design crystal. Then we have the driver. The driver, he describes it to be the magnetic monopole. And the driver was once part of the design crystal. So Ra says that they also have a very intimate relationship. And the magnetic monopole naturally and automatically will follow guidance from the design crystal. While the personality crystal, it's only here to experience life. It's the passenger sitting in the back seat. And its whole role is to look out the window and experience life as it is and not give any directions to the driver. The only crystal that's allowed to give directions to the driver is the design crystal because of their connection. And as we can see, the personality crystal is not even fully seated in the body. It's the only energetic center that kind of gets out of the body system. And that's because it's not fully integrated. We can't actually fully accommodate that level of consciousness. So it's pretty much like a big consciousness is dipping her finger in our energetic system, and that's the personality crystal. The whole bundle of crystals, it's one consciousness that's putting one tiny crystal inside our vehicle to make it alive, to make it functional, and that's our consciousness. So the only role of the consciousness, according to Ra, is to sit in the back seat and look out the window. And he specifically says that the driver does not listen to the personality crystal. Now, this is where I disagree a bit. I am pretty well convinced that the driver is able to listen and take directions from both. It's not ideal, but it's possible. It's the whole thing about free will and accountability. If we actually believe that our driver, our magnetic monopole, has a deep connection only with our body, no connection whatsoever with our mind, it would mean that it moves without us, it takes decisions without us, and our mind would have no choice but to be the passenger in the back seat. But we do have conditioning, we do have the mind playing a role in our life. Actually, more than we have our body playing a role in our life. We have even eating dysfunctions that should not exist. if the body that knows exactly what we need when we need it would be the only one in charge. I am pretty convinced that both of the design crystal and personality crystal, both crystals of consciousness, are able to give directions to the magnetic monopole. There is no distinction, there is no hierarchy in them. They both give directions, and that's what causes the duality in us. That's what causes the turmoil in us. The fact that the magnetic monopole that only attracts both all the time, attracts both what the design crystal tells him to attract, and attracts both what the personality crystal tells him to attract. It's in a constant state of attraction. That's all it does, but it does not discriminate. It does not discriminate between positive and negative. It does not discriminate between right and wrong. It does not discriminate between any. It has no moral judgment. The only thing that it has is its ability to be magnetic and attract consistently to it whatever the two consciousness crystals dictate. So in that sense, if the design crystal dictates that I'm hungry, my magnetic monopole will pull me to go looking for food, will give me cravings, will give me saliva, whatever signal it needs to give me in order for me to go look for food and go searching for it. But at the same time, if my mind gives out fear, gives out doubt, gives out whatever thoughts or things that it connected with, the magnetic monopole will attract those too. There's a funny meme online that's you will always manifest what you fear. That's true, because the magnetic monopole has no power of discrimination, has no judgment embedded in it. So if you really focus on what you're afraid of, you will attract it, because again, the magnetic monopole makes no difference between the two states of consciousness. It makes no difference between your mind's motivation, that could be guilt, fear, innocence, desire, and the design crystal's motivation, that is to harmonize and look for the path of least resistance. It makes no discrimination, and it goes the same way about both of them. This is where I disagree with Ra. I don't think that the magnetic monopole is more connected to one crystal than the other. I think that in the moment that the personality crystal is in the body, it has the same authority, the same value as the design crystal. They are equal, and they both give directions to the magnetic monopole as to what to attract and be possible in your life. Now, how do you recognize when one is attracting and the other is attracting? Well, first of all, the mind is usually things that you are actively thinking of, one. And second, they might not be always positive, because we have overthinking, we have worries, we have negative thought patterns, and those get attracted too. But they are definitely things that they are in front of our minds, let's say. They are accessible to us. They are the black side of the chart. And when I talk about fears and everything that's on the black side of the chart, I refer to them as being conscious, being in front of you, being available to you. And this is where free will comes into play, because we can manipulate these energies. We can be aware of them and choose one way or another, make a conscious choice what we want to attract. However, the design crystal attracts in a very different way. It attracts silently. It's not in front of you. You're not aware of it. You don't know that you're thinking about it. It attracts silently. And the way it shows up mostly that it attracted what it wanted, it's through synchronicities and coincidences that happen out of nowhere. This is something, a message sent clearly from the design crystal to the magnetic monopole to attract something to it. And then it happens sort of by coincidence, magic, or some unexplainable way. It's not unexplainable, it just happened without your conscious awareness. It happened through your design crystal giving a clear direction to the magnetic monopole and it happening, it playing out. This is the relationship between the three of them. And the magnetic monopole, whenever we leave it, whenever we start, actually, we surrender to the design, not to the design crystal, to our human design, to this, whenever we surrender to this aspect, to the whole of ourselves, and listen to our inner authority and follow the guidance of our inner authority over the guidance of the mind, we become, what happens is we become aware of the synchronicities that are being called in by the design crystal, by the Ajna Center. Otherwise, we're completely unaware of them. But when we give power to our full design, and we give power to our authority, making a clear choice to take power away from the mind, away from the conscious choices that we're making every day, be it bad or good, then we start noticing, start becoming aware of what's actually happening around us, what is actually happening to the world around us, and we start realizing that we are attracting all these aspects from a place from our subconscious, which is the design crystal. And the more we play with it, the more we bring awareness to it, the more we exercise this authority, inner authority, and observing how it plays out, observing the synchronicity that it brings in our life, observing the connection it brings in our life, observing the information or everything that it comes in our life sort of by coincidence, we start engaging with it. And the more we engage with it, the more we understand it. And I think it's very important to understand both aspects of our consciousness, not go with one over the other. Just like the magnetic monopole doesn't make any distinction between them. And just like when we contemplate the gene keys, we have to embrace both the shadows and the seeds. It's pretty much the same thing, embracing both sides of our consciousness and realize that we only get formed in the tension between them. If there was no tension between them, if there was no polarity between them, we would not exist. And it's changing too slow. I have here even my design in this format, just to show that most profiles will be very contradictory from the design to the personality. Mine is literally influential on the personality side and aloneness on the design side. One part of me is pushing to aloneness and secluding myself and being completely antisocial, And the other side of me is pushing to connect with people, to network, to influence others, to create these workshops and courses. They are both very real. And in this tension between these two crystals, between these two imprints of myself, it's me formed as I am a whole energetic system. Without any of this, it would not exist. So we don't have to give more importance to one over the other. We have to bring awareness to both of them. And the only way we can actually bring awareness to the design crystal, the only way we can actually bring awareness to our subconscious is by surrendering to our inner authority and making a conscious choice to pause the power of the mind over our uh, attracting abilities, over what orders it gives to the magnetic monopole, and to start noticing and start bringing awareness to what the design crystal decides to bring to us. And by holding both of them in balance, we are also able to much better make decisions that are aligned with all of us. They're not aligned only with certain aspects. And also, it's because most of the times, because of their motivation, the mind is focused on the open center. As I said, the mind's motivation is outward focus. The mind motivation is experiential focus. And the mind's motivation is lesson focused. It wants to learn and develop and grow. That's not a bad thing, that's an amazing thing. But we have to be aware that what's colored in us is ourselves. And what's white in us, and I'm not talking only about the open centers, I'm talking about every single gate and every single channel, even between two defined centers, everything that's white in our chart, it's a source for lessons and conditioning. And that's the main focus of the mind. Every time the mind sees an individual with something that we don't have, it finds it very interesting and it will focus on that person more than it focuses on ourselves. And in order to have a balanced life, we have to hold both of them into reality. We have to be focused on ourselves and on our own path of least resistance, which is the motivation of the design crystal. But we have to keep a focus on always growing, transforming, and learning through our connections, which is the focus of the personality crystal. So the only way to give actual power to both of them, so it doesn't look like only the mind has power, is to surrender to our inner authority and bring awareness. Bring consistent awareness to what's happening to our world, both inner and outer. Now, this is also very interesting because it also talks about these two crystals also talks about the creation of the universe. And we know from the laws of hermetics, the first law of the second law of hermetics. The second law of hermetics says is the law of correspondence, and it says as above, so below. So exactly the tension that we're seeing here, Ra describes the tension at the beginning of the universe, and it's the two crystals of consciousness, the yin and the yang, collided and they formed the whole universe. But it's the tension between them that holds the universe. It's the tension between them that holds material existence into being. Everything, as the law of the third law of hermetics, the law of polarity, everything is binary. And so are we. We are a binary system. The universe is a biverse, as Ra describes it. And it's a sort of a sacred marriage within us of one side to the other, of the outer doing, more masculine side, let's say, which would be the personality crystal, and the being, surrendering, receptive nature of the design crystal, which only looks to harmonize things and find the path of least resistance. And there's a divine union, there's a divine marriage happening within us with the support of the magnetic monopole that holds together this whole illusion of ourselves. And this is what makes us us. There's a balance of both of the features that needs to happen in order for us to be differentiated, in order for us to be authentic, in order for us to be ourselves. Now, I know you don't have a microphone, but if you have any questions, write them down. I'm looking over my notes to see about if I have anything else that I missed. Okay, no questions. Yes, the only thing that I missed was how it's a pretty much descriptive part, how when the design, the personality crystal comes in. The personality crystal comes in at 88 degrees of the sun before our birth of date, which is the moment of imprint of the design crystal. That's when the personality comes in. So 88 degrees, or roughly 3 months before we are born, the design crystal says, I'm done, I finished this body, and it imprints it with its qualities. And then the personality crystal comes in, and in my opinion, starts differentiating the body with specific features, like how your nose looks, specific detailing features that make you you, because it's fully differentiated already, but only at the moment of the birth do you get the second imprint, which is the personality set, which then makes you, okay, I'm done. This is who this being is. And also how the two operate as a general fact. The personality operates above the surface. So it's blunt, it's loud, it's there, it's in our face, we know. If we look at any of these gates, and I do a human design reading, whenever I describe the general keynotes of these gates to any person, the person will immediately recognize themselves in them. While when you describe the design crystal, most of the time people are highly likely to not even admit that they have these features, because the design operates below the surface. It's not being so blunt, it's not being so loud, it's being quite subtle. Ra describes them as highways and tunnels. These are out. If you sit on a landscape, on a hill, you will see all these streets and highways moving across the hills, but you won't even know that there's a tunnel under a hill. But it's there, and it's available, and it's arrow, and it's a channel that transports energy. Yeah. Yes, it depends on the center. The one that takes the longest, I think it's the emotional center. Yes, I think it's the emotional center takes the longest to form. I can confirm that. Second. Yes. The longest it takes to complete it's the solar plexus, and it takes about 35 days to complete. And apart from that, all of the others, it takes about 8 days for the throat to actually come into being from the 2 cells. So the throat comes into action very fast compared to other centers. And it roughly, they roughly get longer and longer periods up to the solar plexus. So it takes 8 days, and then it takes 16 days, and then it takes 24 days, and so on. Usually it takes more and more with each center to develop. I hope this was useful in any way. It's filmed, and I'm gonna upload it as usually on YouTube, unlist it, and paste it in the community. And if you have any questions, you can ask me there, and we can discuss about it in the comments more. I'm gonna stop the recording right here. So thank you all for watching. Thank you, Nadine, for being here, and thank you for everybody who's watching the replay.